Welcome to Informed TV. I'm Ellen Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. Today we're going to take a look at a continuing look at a unique candidate that we talked about last week. In fact, we had her on Skype, and you can see the complete interview if you missed it at informedtv.com, as well as our recent program on energy that I think has a lot to offer for all Minnesotans. In fact, all legislators in the state of Minnesota should be looking at that energy tape. And when we look at our situation this week, as we watch the Viking Stadium unfold and the legislative session coming to an end, we want to continue on with what we as citizens should be asking our parties, our elected officials, and the people in our community. Now, I want to bring up to speed our new audience that we have in Duluth, Rochester, Austin, and Albert Lea. And to you, the people that are new at watching us on Charter Channel 14. Informed TV is on at 6 in the morning for half an hour each day, as well as 7:30 in the evening each day for half an hour. Yet the new audience we have in Duluth, Rochester, and Albert Lea and Austin, they get it at 8:30 in the evening. So if anybody's been watching our program either on community TV in the past and now on Channel 14 on Charter or some other cable outlets we're on and growing, inform your friends in those communities that Channel 14 of Charter has it at 7:30 in the biggest part of our market and 8:30 in those new markets. And we have it some other times in some of the other ones we're putting on. So look for us, we're out there, or go to Informed TV if you missed something. Now, last week we brought in what I think is a very interesting candidate and an interesting viewer over Skype. Now, in the future, we're soon going to have people come into the studio, or if advertising revenue starts coming in like I think it's going to, we want to travel to some areas and interview people in the news. So basically, right now we're letting a production that we're doing run for a full week on our channels, but we're soon hopefully in a position where 3 days of the week you're going to see my commentary, my analysis of what's going on in the news, and the remainder of the week, or at least 3 days of it, an interview like we had with Lynn, or a face-to-face interview with people of substance that I know you'll find very interesting, and maybe something different on Sunday. I'm just not quite sure yet. But I want to give you a heads up on how to find Informed TV and share it with your neighbors, and especially with your elected officials. And I would ask you to take the piece on energy and send it to your state legislators, because they need to be addressing these outrageous price of gasoline when there's no supply shortage, the outrageous price of diesel fuel when there's no shortage. Now, when it comes back to Lynn, I don't know Lynn at all, never met her. But I did find her district interesting, and the fact that the Republicans and the pundits just seem to have written off the 5th district, which is Minneapolis and the western suburbs that touch it. Yet it's big time in the news in our state legislature, and that's why I started looking at it and dug in to see what Lynn had to offer when she was running. First of all, I guess I would challenge the Republicans, or we all should be challenging Republicans that have Republican friends. Here's a candidate that is not getting any help that I can see from outstate Republicans or the Central Committee in Minnesota or the National Party, when, what did she say last week? She's anti-abortion, she's for reduced taxes, and she wants to follow the Republican platform in an incredibly Democratic district. And why aren't they supporting her? Why aren't you, the Republicans, listening? Why aren't you supporting her? because I think she has a lot to offer the party and potentially a lot to offer the state and the nation. When she talks about libertarian, I think the Republicans have to come to grasp, as well as the splinter groups, the libertarians, the Tea Party people. What are they going to do to start working together to see that those of us in the middle start benefiting from their actions? Because that's what the voting public is looking for this fall. And in a political process, one of the great frustrations I've had over the years, and it continues to get worse rather than better, is the fact that both parties continue to bring us politicians, people that need a job, people that do not come to the table with a life history and life experiences that we need. In the case of Lynne here, I think she brings to the table for the Republicans the fact that she's a woman. And some of the issues that are going on women's issues, I think they need to show that they have some major office candidates and office holders as women. And at the same time, she brings in what the Republicans need and we all need: a lawyer that works for people, not for businesses or chase ambulances, as they say. We need somebody that can use their legal skills not to pass more laws, but rather to see that the laws that are out there are benefiting people and the laws, in the case of the Viking Stadium, are being ignored. And I think Lynne has the potential, if she works at it, to do that. And the fact that from a standpoint of my experience in politics with Tip O'Neill, when we worked on sugar policy, politics are always local. And if and when Lynne gets the nomination, or she decides to run in the Republican primary, if she doesn't get it, she has to see that she addresses the issues locally by actions, not talking about the issues like her opponent Keith Ellison's doing. She needs to show right now, and after she gets the endorsement, that she knows how to make things happen, so the press in the Twin Cities can't ignore her. And the people in her district will say, what? We have a person that's actually looking out for us? And when I look at the Republicans here in the 7th Congressional District, they had a female running for Senator Hoffman, I believe her name is, out of Otter Tail County, and worked to get the Republican endorsement. And my understanding, she was beat in the first ballot. At least they should have strung things out a little bit for having good political purposes. Lee Byberg, who has dual citizenship, and yet the Republicans talked about Obama on his citizenship issues. To not give a sitting state senator a chance at it, especially when Lee got crucified by Collin Peterson, and I think he'll get crucified again. And in fact, what I know about Lee Byberg, I won't vote for him. I'll support Collin Peterson. I voted for him in the past, and I'll vote for him again unless the Independence Party comes up with somebody unique. And so when we look at this overall situation politically, I think the Republicans have to reach out to women and reach out women now. In fact, Lynne, if I was her and I was involved in the Republican Party today, I would ask that Mrs. Pawlenty, Tim Pawlenty's wife, runs against Klobuchar. And I think Team Pawlenty would have an incredible chance of beating Klobuchar, for she clearly needs to go based on her record. And I can't not figure out why the Republicans aren't starting to pound and pound the question, are you better off now than you were in 2006 when you were foolish enough to elect Amy Klobuchar, a party faithfulist that has played the role of Cinderella, smiled and stepped back and stayed out from addressing their real issues? Why? Because she doesn't know the economic mess we're in or those issues. And if I was Lynne, I would be screaming to the top of my lungs at that 5th District Convention that not only do they need to put a woman in that follows the Republican primary, they need to get a Senate candidate, namely Mrs. Pawlenty, to run against Klobuchar, and she also has the potential to win. Yet at the same time, when we're giving a candidate some advice here from farm country to the big city, we have to look at what she can do locally and what other candidates should be doing locally. And why I want to talk about Lynne in your unique position to lead is the fact that she can show the people in her district that probably have never voted Republican what a Republican that focuses on their skills in the private sector, in this case Lynne with a legal degree, and the 5th District, especially the city of Minneapolis, being burdened with actually paying money for a new Viking stadium. I think Lynne needs to be in contact both personally and publicly with Senator Rosen and the House and Senate Republicans on what's going on with this Viking stadium. She doesn't have to be against the Vikings, but we need to see that the Republicans explore all avenues. You look at my website and go to the bottom and click to old pages. My original thought was, why don't we just sell the Metrodome to the Vikings player or the National Football League Player Association so they get some insight on their business and sell it to them, even if we had to sell it for $1. But the reality is, if you look at the Forbes article that I talked about in that interview, it shows that Green Bay is in a good position by owning their own team. So why doesn't the state of Minnesota explore that avenue? If we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build a stadium for billionaires and millionaire players, why don't we just spend a little bit more? And if we're going to fund it with gaming, like the Republicans are wanting to do, in reality then what? It doesn't cost the taxpayer anything, or the citizen of Minnesota anything, unless they participate in gaming, and we know a lot of people do. So why not look at paying what that Forbes article talked about, give Ziggy $850 million worth what the team is worth, or even give him $900 million, and we would own the team. We already have 2 stadiums that are plenty good to play in, the new Gopher Stadium or the remodeled Metrodome. So why do we want to build a stadium? Just own the team. That should be on the table. And from Lynne's standpoint, in her district, why aren't we looking at some of that Star Tribune land? For all of a sudden, we're letting big business again, or realtor developers saying, this is the only spot. There's a lot of that parking lot country down there that was before Star Tribune land. Why aren't we looking at some of that? I firmly believe it belongs in the city of Minneapolis to use the light rail system, just like the baseball stadium is doing. But from a standpoint of a candidate that really wants to show they're working for the state of Minnesota and the average citizen, she should be challenging the Republican legislature right now. How are you giving the citizens of Minneapolis the obligation to put real dollars in on sales tax money and conventioneering money when you don't want the rest of the state to do it? Excuse me, I've got a voice problem today. So from a standpoint of looking at these issues, she should be challenging. She should be the one telling the voters in Minneapolis, unless the legislature gets their act together and finds a statewide funding approach, which was probably let the horses, the tracks be involved in gaming, get some tax on Native Americans. If I looked, I think only 2% of her district are Native American. And see that we're looking at all avenues. In fact, firmly believe this should be a special session avenue, and they really haven't opened up and looked at all the avenues. And if Lynne starts showing leadership and gets her own Minnesota legislature on the hook. And the other issue is, she talked about being a Christian. And I like that, I respect that, I think most of you people do. The program that the Republicans in the legislature are presenting is what? They want to expand gaming in the neighborhoods. That just appalls me. Now, I don't know what your area, but the Alexandria Lakes area, pull tabs are a huge business. I cannot believe the amount of activities when you go to a bar in the Alexandria area, the amount of pull tabs. And here the Republican Party is saying they want to expand gaming in the neighborhoods. I think it's fine to fund it with gaming. As a Christian, I have no problem with that whatsoever, but not in the neighborhoods. That if you want to go to an Indian casino, that part of the earnings they make goes to support the stadium. You go to the horse track, they should be able to compete against our Native Americans that have had a monopoly long enough. And look at some other areas as far as casinos or gaming or some type of drink tax that the mayor of St. Paul brought up that I think has a lot of merit as well. And by the way, he's Democrat. And from a standpoint of Lynne, on Block E there, they should be looking at a venue for gaming in downtown Minneapolis, but not for local people, not for people in the neighborhoods. I think that should be a venue for people who stay in a hotel in the city of Minneapolis. If we're going to do special things for the city that gets it, then they should be able to have a casino downtown for the people that spend money in the restaurants or stay overnight, that are truly guests from outstate or out of state or coming in for the Mall of America. That it's not a temptation for the people in Lynne's district or any of the neighborhoods. They have to make a true commitment to stay overnight and then to use that casino. Because expanding gaming in the neighborhood just makes me furious when I hear about it and what I see going on here in the Alexandria Lakes area. I'm totally against that, as should you. And the other avenue that I would like to see Lynne look at is we need to modernize government. Now, we talked about how the Republicans have the marriage amendment on the ballot, which I think is great governance. They also have the voter ID that I think is good governing. And yet they should add one thing that Pawlenty talked about when he first got in office, and that is convert our legislative process in Minnesota to one house. We don't need two houses fighting like they've been doing when both parties control the legislature. We need 67 senators, whether they're Democrat or Republican, can easily manage it, and our governors need to get out of the dictating business and start administrating policy rather than dictating policy. So we need to modernize our government, and I think Lynne and you and I should be pushing these Republicans that I think will not end up with control the way they were head-handed to them in redistricting, that they have three major items on the ballot. And that includes modernizing Minnesota's government, just like Nebraska has done for years. And what does that do by shrinking it down? It brings in a better grade of people than we've been putting in St. Paul for a long time. And it makes the district bigger. And what does that do? It makes it tough for one party to dominate an area. So there's a lot of things. And then from a standpoint of Lynne on a national basis, if she wants to show leadership to a Republican Party that definitely needs leadership. She needs to introduce what the Repke plan for Congress, and that is that Congress people should be there for a 4-year term. Their term should follow the president's term. And we also need to shrink the size of the House from 435 members to about 200, half the size. Once again, it widens the district. You want to get the partisanship out of the debate, make the districts bigger. The Senate proves that. And unfortunately, the Senate has become such professional actors, and their 60 closure vote has made that institution a less than productive agency. And the same thing we need to talk about with a candidate like Lynne or the other candidates is we need a 12-year limit on House membership terms. And we need a 12-year limit on Senate terms. And we need an 18-year limit if they serve in both the House and the Senate, if we're truly going to modernize our government and start to get things done. Now, back to a little bit about the Vikings debate and the city of Minneapolis. The interesting thing that I looked at there is the fact that what are we paying for sales tax? The truth of the matter is we just increased it for the Legacy Fund, and if you become a regular listener of Informed TV, we're soon going to have a program on the Legacy Fund and how it's working in the Alexandria Lakes area and some of the shortcomings that I see that as I researched it. But at the same time, in Lynne's district, that she wants to be the candidate and she wants to be the congressman, and I brought up about the legislature dumping all this responsibility of real dollars on the citizens of Minneapolis. What happens? We have a 6.875 tax rate, sales tax rate. I checked here in Alexandria, that's all we pay. We don't have any conventioneering tax or anything like that. Yet in Minneapolis, when I went to the website, Minneapolis Sucks, and I encourage you to go there, it reminded me we didn't even have a sales tax in Minnesota until '67, and suddenly the lowest sales tax you will pay in the city of Minneapolis is about a percentage less than we're paying people. 7.75%, and this includes the 6.875% in sales tax we're paying now. It includes a 1/4% transit improvement tax, a 0.15% Hennepin County sales tax, and I'm sure the Twins get some of that money, a 0.5% Minneapolis sales tax, and at any rate, the maximum tax, if you're a guest of Minneapolis, can be as high as 16 something. I don't know if they have it on this site, but I also went to the Minnesota Revenue site. Yeah, here it is. The highest sales tax rate you will pay is 16.275% for a drink in a downtown Minneapolis bar with live entertainment. Just think of that. So if Lynne wants to be a tax cutter, and yet my position is I'm very pro-choice, always have been. I think women have that unique right, and families have that right, especially when there's issues with the fetus. And we also look at the fact that when it comes to revenue, we can't cut our way out of this, and we can't grow our way out of it. The economics of the world has changed, people, and I think Lynne needs some real economic advice. Use her legal expertise to lead, but when it comes to economics, find somebody that she can count on and look at the real numbers that we're facing on an economic standpoint. Because we're in a position, people, where if you look at her interview, she talked about how many thousands of years at $1 a second or something like this. but I was too busy trying to watch the mechanics of the Skype interview. If you take the Bush tax cuts that are scheduled to expire in January of 2013, the start of the next new year, you'll find people that, one of my programs I talk about the actual numbers, but it's like $447 billion per year more revenue if we let the Bush tax cuts expire. It's still going to take like 42 years to pay off the national debt, and that's with no interest. So people, I'm not presenting Lynne because I agree with some of her views. In fact, I disagree in many ways, but yet I think she offers something real unique. And I think we as people trying to figure out how we're going to address this mess. Well, the truth of the matter is we can't address the mess with the people that have failed us in the last 6 years. We can't address it when we have no lawyer, no attorney general in Minnesota or the nation that's looking out for these laws that are not productive to the average citizen, not protecting the average citizen, not delivering the cost savings, not assuring that we have the services that we need. And when we look at tax rates, we have a situation with 50% of the people in the United States not paying taxes. That's outrageous. We have to address that. We're not addressing our home mortgage issue. That's still a major rope around our neck. That's a challenge Lynne needs to look at as well as all our congressional delegations. People, what Informed TV is all about is making it plain to you that we can't listen to the propagandists, the Rush Limbaughs, the Larry Kudlows, the MSNBCs, the CNBCs, the Fox News that are trying to paint a rosy picture when the picture is saying we have to make serious decisions, and the sooner we make them, the better off we'll all be. And that's why I bring up a unique candidate that I don't know, but I think has some real potential if she gets an opportunity. And I think we all have an obligation to encourage anybody that has a good record in their public life of accomplishing things to start working for the average citizen. Our Republican Democratic Party have not gotten that message. And hopefully we at Informed TV here, you our listeners, we can see that that's happened. Thanks for listening to Informed TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota.